Now we're going to review the first part of Unit 2, which was on slope, x and y intercepts, and graphing. So the definition of slope is your change in y over change in x. Remember, we had that little triangle, which was a delta. That is the shorthand way to say change in y over change in x. And we read as delta y over delta x. So if you're lazy and don't want to write change in, you can do that. We also have two special slopes, which were 0 and undefined. Remember, we had that it was no and okay. All right? We also had hoy and vux as a way to remember that. So from a table, if we want to do change in y over change in x, that's where we do our little arrow thing. So how do you go from -4 to -2? We add 2. How do you go from 0 to 6? We add 6. And slope is change in y, which is 6, over change in x, which is 2. So we get 3. From a graph, we want to think about rise over run. So finding my slope. Find one place it goes through a corner. Find another place it goes through a corner. And my rise is 1 over a run of 2. You want to make sure that you pay attention to whether it has a positive or negative slope so that when it's negative, you have to put the negative sign. That means it's going down from left to right. And from an equation, that's where I need to solve for y. That means get y by itself, or get it into y equals mx plus b. So the first thing for me to get y by itself is to minus 2x from both sides, and I get -4y equals -2x plus 12, and then divide everything by -4, and I get y equals 1/2 x minus 3. So my slope would be 1/2. Then we looked at intercepts, which I put hopefully enough emphasis on right here. It's not the same thing as slope. An x-intercept means that y equals 0, and a y-intercept means that x equals 0. So we looked at doing that from an equation. When we're doing it from an equation, I'm going to have two parts. Finding the x, finding the y. So if I want to find my x-intercept, that means y is 0. Y-intercept means x is 0. So we're going to plug in 0 for y, so 2x minus 4 times 0 equals 12. 4 times 0 is going to be nothing, so that term goes away. And then I'm going to divide both sides by 2. So x equals 6. So my x-intercept is 6, 0. Y-intercept, I do the reverse. Plug in 0 for x. 2 times 0 minus 4y equals 12. What is 2 times 0? 0. And then I'm going to divide both sides by -4 and get that y equals -3. So my y-intercept would be 0, -3. When I'm doing it from a table, we're not going to do the arrow thing because we're doing intercepts. My key number I'm looking for intercepts in a table is going to be 0. So I have -4, 0, and 0, 12. If you forget which of these is the x and which of these is the y-intercept, think about graphing it. If I was graphing the point -4, 0, that would be on the x-axis. So this is my x-intercept. And the point 0, 12, if I think about graphing, would be on my y-axis. So that's going to be my y-intercept. When I'm trying to do it from a graph, then I'm going to look where they're crossing. So where is my line crossing my x-axis? It's crossing at 4, 0. And where is my line crossing the y-axis? That's at 0, -2. So after we talked about different ways to describe my graph, then we looked at graphing. So if I graph something that has one variable, that's where we did either hoy or vux. So remember that stood for horizontal lines have 0 slope and our y equals a number. Vertical lines have undefined slope and our x equals a number. If we have two variables, that's where we move with M and begin with B. Move with M, begin with B. I guess I should have reversed those. Begin with B, move with M. That's okay. All right. So this first one, I was trying to save space, so I kind of like, put it all on one graph. So x equals 1. That equation has one variable, and it's going to be a Vux equation. So I'm going to go to my x-axis at 1 and draw a vertical line. That was a beautiful line. Then I'm going to go for my second equation. That's a Hoy equation. It has one variable, and it's y. So I go on the y-axis to -2, and then I graph my line through that. All right. Looking at the next one, it has two variables. So my b, where I'm going to begin, is 1, and my m is -2/3. So begin with b, which is 1, and move with m, which is down 2, and right 3. And if you want, you can keep going in the other direction to give you some more points. This one gave us a little trouble when we were on the quarter test and trying to graph this line. So I need to begin with b. My b is actually 0, and my slope is 3, or 3 over 1. I'm going to do 3 over 1. A lot of people drew this as a Hoy equation, but it's not Hoy because you have this x, which means we want to think of this as y equals mx plus b. So begin at 0, and then go up 3 and right 1. And I'm going to do that backwards too. Next, we looked at graphing inequalities. Graphing inequalities is the same as graphing a line, except for I also have to decide, am I shading above or below my line, and is it going to be a solid or a dashed line? So this is two variables, so I'm still going to begin with b, which is -5, move with m, which is 3 over 5. Since it's less than or equal to, the equal to means it's going to be a solid line, and the less than means I'm going to shade below. So I just go ahead and identify those things before I graph. So begin with b, which is -5, move with m, which is up 3 and right 5. Then I'm going to connect these with a solid line. And I already decided it's less than, so I'm going to shade it below that line. The next inequality only has one variable. If it has one variable, that means it's either Hoy or Vux. Since this is x, it's going to be Vux. So I go to my x-axis at -5. Now I need to draw a vertical line. But since it's an inequality, I need to decide if it's solid or dotted. Since I don't see the inequality, I'm going to draw a dotted line. And when you have a Vux equation, this is the only time that I need to think left and right. And since it's a less than, I'm going to think to the left. And that's because I only have an x, and what direction does x go? It goes left and right. Otherwise, I have a y, so I need to think in terms of y. This last inequality looks a little different because it hasn't been solved for y yet. So in this graph, the first thing I need to do is solve for y in the inequality. So I need to subtract the 3x from both sides. -2y is less than -3x plus 10. Then divide everything by -2. But when I'm doing an inequality and I divide by a negative, I have to reverse my inequality. So it's going to be a greater than. Then this is going to change to a positive 3 over 2x minus 5. So begin at -5, move with m, which is 3 over 2. Since I don't see an equal to, that means that I'm going to draw a dotted line. And it's a greater than symbol, so I'm going to shade all of this above. So you want to make sure you're paying attention to your inequality at the end after I've solved for y and not at the beginning. When we graph a system of inequalities, all that means is I do my steps for a normal inequality, but I just have two things graphed on one. So in this first one, I'm going to begin with B, which is 2, move with M, which is up 1, right 2. Since it has the equal to, I'm going to connect that with a solid line. And I'm going to shade lightly in pencil below that line. I'm going to go this way. I'm going to make my line a little bit darker so it stands out. Then I graph my other line. I'm going to do that in a different color. So begin with B for this one is -3. Move with M, which would be down 2, right 1. I'm going to do a couple other points. It does not have an equal to, so I'm going to connect these with a dashed line. Since it's a less than, I'm going to shade below. Now my answer is where these two things are overlapping. So notice I did them in 2 different colors so that it's going to stand out. So this green part is my actual answer. Like technically I could erase any other shading on here. It's just this kind of like bottom left part of my graph. Plus those lines. Okay. Next I have one variable. So that's going to be a Vux equation because it's an x. So I'm going to go on x-axis to -3. I'm going to draw a vertical line, and it's going to be a solid line since it's less than or equal to. Remember, this is the one time that we're going to think to the left. Actually, let me do that like this. To the left of this line. Then I have my other inequality, begin with B, which is 2. Move with M. Notice on this one I can't go up 5 and right 3, so I'm going to go down 5 and left 3. It does not have a equal to, so these are going to be connected by a dotted line. And it's less than, so I'm going to shade below. Notice this one just has a little teensy tiny bit at the bottom where it is overlapping. It's really not very much. The first equation in the next one needs to be solved for y, so I'm going to do that first. So I have 4x plus y is less than 2. I just have one step, which is to minus 4x from both sides. So y is less than -4x plus 2. So my m is 2. Sorry, my b is 2. Then we're going to move with m, which is down 4 and right 1. There's no equal to, so this is going to be connected with a dashed line, dotted line. It's less than, so I'm going to shade below that line. Once again, I have 2 equations, so I'm kind of doing this lightly. Then my next one is going to be a Hoy equation because there's only one value, one variable, and it's y. So Hoy, we go on the y-axis to -2. It's Hoy, so we're going to draw a horizontal line. Notice I'm doing a dashed line because it does not have the equal to, and then greater than means I'm going to go above. So my answer is the overlapping part, which is kind of the top left of this one. My last inequality, both of these need to be solved for y. So I'm going to do that for both of them at the same time. So minus 3x minus 3x, 2y is greater than or equal to -3x minus 2. And then we're going to divide everything by 2. And I get y is greater than or equal to -3/2x minus 1. Then I have x plus 2y is less than or equal to 2. So minus x from both sides and divide by 2. That's really a -1 in front of the x, so this is going to be y is less than or equal to -1/2 x plus 1. So I have my 2 inequalities here that I'm going to graph. So I'm going to start with the top one, begin with b, which is -1. Move with m, which is down 3, right 2, or up 3, left 2, and I'm going to connect that with a solid line, since it has the equal to, and I'm going to shade above. The next one, begin with B, which is positive 1. Move with M, which is down 1, right 2, or up 1, left 2. It has an equal to, so I'm also going to connect that with a solid line. And we're shading below because it's the less than or equal to. Once again, my answer is really the part where they overlap, which if you do this, like if you get really good at it and can do it without making mistakes, highlighter is really great for doing this because you could use like pink and yellow, and then the overlap is going to be orange, and that would be your answer. There we go.